Hello, everyone, and we want to welcome you to today's podcast where we are going to talk about the Great Depression. And I am Dr. Whitney Curry, and you are who?
Joshua Curry.
Awesome. So let's just jump right into it. Is that okay?
Yes.
So let's talk about the Great Depression. What was the Great Depression?
The Great Depression was actually a very severe economic collapse where it caused many businesses to fail, many banks to close down, and it also caused millions of people to lose their jobs.
Wow, that is so sad to hear.
It is.
But at the same time, it's interesting. So explain to me, when did it take place and how long did it last?
So it took place right about 1929.
Okay.
And that was right around the time where the stock market crash happened. And throughout that time, it lasted for about most of the 1930s.
Okay.
But it did end up ending around World War II.
Oh, interesting. That's something I did not know. So tell everyone who is watching and everyone who is listening, why is the Great Depression considered one of the most economic crises in the U.S. history?
It is actually considered one of the greatest, or worse, I guess you could say, economic crises because it caused so much poverty. Like, poverty was everywhere. There was no type of people having any type of money around this time. Like the markets were down, businesses were failing, as I said before, and it honestly was just a lot of people just in horrible financial situations.
Got you. I completely understand. And was it widespread? Did everyone go through it? Was it certain economic classes that went through, or was it everyone?
It was mostly everyone for the most part. Poverty was at an all-time high at this point. It was very widespread.
Got you. So what were some of the major causes for it?
Some of the major causes for the Great Depression was actually certain things like the stock market crash for one, also overproduction.
Okay.
And so you also had a few other things like low wages and unequal distribution of wealth.
Got you. I couldn't imagine living in that time. Can you?
Neither.
It seems like it would be absolutely terrible. Even though it seems like we're kind of living in it right now, something similar, I couldn't imagine being a part of that. So how did the exact stock market crash of 1921 happen?
That happened from a lot of businesses ended up putting their money into the stock market and things like that, and it actually made it to the point where the stock market ended up crashing just off of the economy being in such a horrible state.
Okay.
And from that, it caused a lot of panic and things like that, which made people end up losing all their savings that they had put into it, and it put people just in a very horrible position.
I can imagine that. That makes sense, though. So then if the stock market crashed, then what roles did the bank play in making the depression worse?
Well, the banks actually had a very big role too, because people lost all the money that they had in the banks.
Gotcha.
So when banks started failing, it started causing people to lose all their money, and it made it to the point where they couldn't afford basic necessities and things like that. So that also added on to people losing their savings and different things. It also caused businesses to start failing and just a whole bunch of chaos, I would say.
Makes sense. So then what happened? What role did overproduction play?
So overproduction was actually a very big role as well. It was when companies literally would overproduce the products that they are making to the point where the people actually couldn't afford these things.
Okay.
And because the people couldn't afford them, they were left with layoffs and businesses having to go into foreclosure and shut down. And it honestly just was not a good thing for the businesses that were continuing to overproduce their products.
Well, it seems like you've given an overview of what the Great Depression looks like, or maybe kind of like an introduction of the Great Depression. Let's dive a little deeper. Can we do that? Let's talk a little bit more in depth about the impact that it had on America and what that kind of looks like. So tell everyone who's watching and everyone who's listening, since we're going to call you the expert of the Great Depression, if that's okay. How did the Great Depression affect the everyday American?
Well, the everyday American and like American families during this time, they were greatly affected because it got to the point where there was no real money amongst families. Like, poverty was so widespread at this point where you wouldn't really look at a family at all that just had money. You get what I'm saying? And so there was families that had no money. They were struggling to try to pay their bills and things. They lost their homes, and a lot of them lost their jobs as well.
Okay. So if the regular everyday person is struggling to make ends meet, and you know that saying where their ends they're not supposed to meet, then how were people surviving?
They were honestly just doing whatever they could to survive. They were a lot of people went and they were trying to look for jobs. They they would go into different businesses like that were still kind of surviving just a little bit, trying to apply for jobs there. They would actually, as I will talk a little bit later on, but they actually were taking kids out of schools, trying to get them to work and help stay afloat.
Now, I'm sure kids would think that that's a great idea. They weren't too upset about that, if you could imagine.
Get to skip school. That's all that they care about.
Unless they don't like hard work.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this word, Hoovervilles.
Okay.
What are Hoovervilles?
So Hoovervilles are actually towns that were developed and built by homeless people.
Okay.
And they were kind of supposed to serve like as a message to send and be like a symbol, I guess you could say, for President Hoover, because the people were very upset that he wasn't taking enough action throughout this whole time.
So President Hoover was the president at the time of the Great Depression?
In the beginning, yes.
Okay.
And how he dealt with it, the people were very upset.
Okay.
So they were serving more as a symbol to show their discomfort and their problems that they had with him.
So they felt like he was the cause? Even though he wasn't, did people feel like President Hoover was the cause of the Great Depression?
I wouldn't say that they felt as though he was necessarily the cause of it, but I feel like they thought that he wasn't doing enough to try and help the economy get back to where it should be. Yeah, kind of not really trying to fix the economy.
Got you. So then, are you aware of who the next incoming president was?
Yes.
Okay.
The next incoming president was actually Franklin D. Roosevelt.
Ah, got you. Awesome. So then, how did high unemployment rise during the Great Depression?
So, unemployment got to its absolute peak during this time.
I can imagine.
It was up to 25%, and that literally meant that 1 in 4 Americans were unemployed. So you could look at a group of people walking down the street, and one of those 4 people will literally be unemployed.
Yeah.
And with that was just very crazy to me to find out that many people in America, because America has a very high population, so to know that 1 in 4 people are unemployed, it is a very large number.
Absolutely. And to see that people who were homeless was at an all-time high too, it had to just be devastating.
Yeah, it was.
So then, how did we went from unemployment, we talked about those who were homeless. Let's talk about the children and how their education was affected, because you mentioned that children were being taken out of school. So how did that affect them? I'm sure it couldn't have been good.
It was not at all. And there was a great number of children who actually were pulled out, like how I was previously saying. There was a great number of children who were pulled out of schools, and they had to go and work and try and find a way to make some type of money to help their family out, or even just take care of their family, because a lot of people were getting sick during this time as well.
Okay.
So a lot of children weren't able to go to school.
Gotcha.
As well, there was another number of children that actually were in school, but they weren't getting proper food. Like, they weren't able to eat a good lunch. They were struggling with that. And then they also didn't have proper health care.
Got
so
you.
healthcare was another big issue around this time as well.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. Why was healthcare an issue? Because I mean, I understand that there was a lot going on. People didn't have money. Unemployment was high. There was a lot of homelessness. But if they were able to go to school, why were people getting sick? Like, what does one have to do with the other?
More so because they couldn't afford like medicines, different medicines that were needed throughout this time, different, just like even common colds, like things that were spreading that were causing people that could end up leading to deeper medical issues.
Gotcha.
They just couldn't necessarily take care of it, and as well as like healthcare, like I mean not healthcare, health insurance and things like that.
Got you. That makes sense. Yeah. So. There's something within the Depression, the Great Depression, that's called the Dust Bowl, right?
Yes.
So explain to everyone who's watching again, what is the Dust Bowl? Because this is very interesting.
So the Dust Bowl was actually a time of extreme drought, and it was actually a time where there was literally dust storms happening, and these things were affecting farmers greatly. Definitely, farmers had it, I would say, the worst out of this whole thing. And that was just a very hard time for them.
Why was it so hard for the farmers?
So the farmers actually ended up getting to the point where they had to, like their crop prices literally were falling, and their crops were being destroyed from the dust. And it was actually causing health care problems with them. Like they couldn't breathe right. Like there was so much dust and things in the air, it was making bad air quality.
Really?
Yeah, so it was definitely a big problem on their part. There was a great number of farmers who ended up having to sell their land or abandon it, and it was just very devastating for them.
Wow. So I could imagine from that, then people would have to leave and go somewhere else, right?
Yeah, they definitely did. And amongst those people, there was a great amount of farmers who ended up selling their land or just abandoning it and migrating to a little bit more west. And they ended up going and trying to escape, especially like those people that were in California. Like they were trying to get to more places that they just felt that they would just be better off at.
That makes sense. So that seems like that would add to the problem with people having enough food.
Yeah.
Right.
And they actually were going and trying to find other jobs. So like they would leave their whole lives, like people that just grew up on farms and just doing farming ever since like kids, you know, and that was their whole profession, and that was their life. That was how they were making their money, and they had to abandon that to go and try and find a normal job just to stay afloat, you know.
It seems so crazy. So the Great Dust Bowl, out of nowhere, we're dealing with this Great Depression. Then on top of that, there's these dust storms that are happening. Like it seems like things couldn't possibly get worse. So this was happening where on the East Coast. What part was it happening? Did you mention that? And where were people going to?
They were going west, like so it was happening more around like on the West Coast, or like on the Midwest.
Okay,
rather.
like the plains?
Yeah, around the Great Plains. And so they were trying to migrate somewhere else, like trying to move to a different place more around on the side of like California, or going up there.
Okay.
So that way that way they can kind of escape like that desert kind of area.
That makes sense. Okay.
Get closer to water.
So they weren't on the East Coast, like where there were trees and stuff.
Yeah.
They were in like a desert area.
Place, yeah.
Okay. Now I'm following you. Definitely. Okay. So, we talked about President Hoover, and you also talked about Roosevelt. So how does this all come together for a full circle? Like, what was the government's role in all of this? Let's talk about that. Like, what did President Hoover do to respond initially to the Great Depression?
That's a very good question, actually, because President Hoover, and this is like kind of a reason why a lot of people had such a big issue with him.
Okay.
Because he thought that this was just going to be like a normal thing. So he thought like it was just going to be like a quick, maybe a couple months, but he thought that the economy would balance itself out.
Gotcha.
And reform itself, you know, and that was not the case at all. So that was a big issue that the public had with him, and he kind of limited government involvement, I guess you could say.
So basically you're saying he didn't really do anything.
He didn't really do much of anything, and that was a lot of people.
That was the problem with people. That was the problem. I got it. So, my perspective on dealing with the people and the president is that when things happen in the economy, they think that the president can fix it. But is that even possible for the president to fix what's happening in the economy?
And excuse me, I definitely don't know if they can fix it per se, but I definitely think that they can try and make an effort to do so. So like with Franklin D. Roosevelt, he actually came in and he put in different programs to kind of help reform and rebuild and recover like the economic state of the world at this time.
Got you. Good. So then what did he do?
So he put into play different programs, so like there were different government, like they opened up job opportunities, different government jobs, different things like that, just to give the people another chance to kind of like recover and try and balance out banks. He also helped with that and just do small things like that. Like he was trying to make an effort to help the economy get back to normal in any way, shape, or form.
It makes sense. Like, I believe he came up with something called the New Deal.
Yeah,
what was that?
So the New Deal was actually a program that he set in place where it would give people jobs. It would help reform and rebuild and recover the whole the whole country from the Great Depression, and that was what that was.
Yeah, so how did it help the Americans?
So it helped the Americans, as I said before, it was giving them new job opportunities. It was finding anything that they could do, like it was giving them financial aid, it was helping them pay whatever they needed to get paid. It was just the government trying to reach out and see what the people needed.
Got you. So his concern was trying to basically bring the economy back into balance, right? Yeah. So then do you believe that everyone benefited equally from this New Deal?
Well, also another major thing around this time was racism and like segregation and things like that. Or not even necessarily segregation, but just
racism.
Racism was at a, big cause or big problem back then. So there was a lot of people who did not necessarily get equality throughout this time.
I believe that.
So you have a lot of the white people who were back working, back with their privileges and all the things that they needed to survive. But you had immigrants, you had women, you had African Americans that were kind of all still being treated with a lot of discrimination.
Of course.
And things that they didn't have all the same privileges that white people had.
I'm sure.
So it was just a big ordeal with that too.
I'm sure it was. But I'm sure at the same time it gave them a taste of what it felt like to be in that situation. So how did the Great Depression then change the role of the federal government?
Well, it changed the role for the federal government by they ended up having to implement different things like continuous and like regular bank regulations. So that way when they see like banks getting on that edge where they might be failing or get to the point where they may have to close down, they step in and try and balance out their books or whatever they need to do. They also help with government job opportunities. So like there's more security things that they have put in place, with also helping citizens make sure that this type of thing doesn't happen again. So citizens throughout crises, so that way we don't have to have the same struggles that were had during the Great Depression.
Yeah, and a lot of people, I think, rely because of this heavily on the government when the government has a host of its own issues. So even up until today, we see how the government can't work its own issues out, and they unfortunately end up shutting down.
Yeah, that is true.
So how does the Great Depression still affect America today? You know, as I mentioned, we still have issues that are going on.
Yeah. In fact, it affects the world today because there have been new things that have also been implemented, such as like Social Security, financial aid, and different things like that, where the government is literally going to help the people, to a place where things can't even get as bad as they were. So like with businesses failing and things like that, businesses still fail, of course,
they do.
but they just try to help out the economy in a different way now. Like they're looking out for the signs that could show any sort of thing that will point back to how it was.
Understood. So then, how did it come to a close? What what event actually helped to close out the Great Depression?
Well, the event that helped close out the Great Depression was actually World War II.
Okay.
And because of World War II, there were new jobs for, of course, all men. Like they were getting drafted and things like that.
Right.
They were going out and fighting, so it gave them new job opportunities. It kind of helped bring back balance in the economy because there was also more industrial building and things like that. So it was more reforming that the economy had to do, which gave the people more opportunity to do so. So it gave them new job opportunities and things like that.
Yeah, which makes sense. And a lot of Americans don't like war, but at the same time, it means money.
Yeah, definitely.
That's just what happened. So I don't know about everyone who was watching, but this was very informative.
Yeah.
I learned a lot of information. So thank you so much for all that you have shared on today. So in closing, if you had to explain the importance of the Great Depression to someone your age, because you are younger, it's not like you lived during the Great Depression, right? What would you say?
To kind of say the importance of this, I would say that it's definitely important, even on a personal matter, to make sure that you're having all your things in order and be prepared for things. So instead of like kind of being reckless with like your spending, reckless with your money, just doing anything in the moment, I think it's definitely important to have some type of fund set aside, so that way in case things like this do happen, you can make sure that you are okay in times of these desperate things. Like I also would say that it is important to know why certain things are the way they are now. So as far as like Social Security and how things are with that, how the government is, how they make sure that the banks are balanced and things like that, so that way there's not that same fall from whatever's happening. I think that is all very important now, and it kind of helps give you a better perspective on why the world is the way it is today.
I totally agree. Thank you so much. This has been great. We hope that everyone watching enjoyed our show. This has been the Curry Podcast, and we'll see you next time. Bye.